His expression hardens. This is not how I want things to be between us, Villanelle. I don't want to have to negotiate every decision. I know you don't. You want me to be your killer doll. Wind me up, point me at the target, bang bang and back in my box. She looks him in the eye. Sorry, but that's not how I function these days. I see. So how do you function, exactly? Like a thinking, feeling human being. He looks away. Please, Villanelle, don't talk to me about feelings. You're better than that. We're better than that. Are we? Yes. We see the world for what it is. A place where there's only one law, survival. You survive very comfortably, do you not? Maybe. And why's that? Because give or take a couple of reckless incidents, you've obeyed the rules. What did I tell you in London? She looks away irritably. That I'm never completely safe. And that I should never fully trust anyone. Exactly. Remember that, and you're fine. Forget it and you're fucked. He reaches for the cigarettes. Forget it and we're all fucked. Frowning, Villanelle walks to the plate glass door to the balcony and pulls it open. Humid air fills the room. Worried about your health? Constantine asks, lighting a cosmos. I'd have thought a bullet in the back of the head was a more pressing concern. She looks at him. The acrid tobacco smell reminds her of their earliest days together. In Russia, he must have smoked at least a packet a day. So who's going to shoot me? Eve Pilastri? I don't think so. Trust me, Villanelle, her people will kill you without a second thought. One word from Pilastri to Edwards, and MI6 will send in an E-Squadron action team. Which is why you have to get out, now. Shanghai's a big place if you're Han Chinese, but it's a very small town if you're not. You could run into her anywhere. I won't, don't worry. But I do have a way of getting to her. And perhaps of finding out what she knows. Really? He exhales cigarette smoke, which drifts away on the warm breeze. And would you kindly tell me how? She does so, and for a long time he's silent. It's too dangerous, he says eventually. Too many variables. We could end up attracting exactly the wrong kind of attention. You once told me that kind of operation was a specialty of yours. She looks at him speculatively. Fear, sex and money, you said. The three great persuaders. It's too dangerous, he repeats. She looks away. We might never get this chance again. We can't afford not to take it. He stands up. Walks out onto the balcony. Finishes his cigarette, taking his time, and flicks the end out into space. If we do it, he says. You stay out of sight. I make the play. Agreed? She grins, her expression fierce. Shit, says Eve, staring at her phone. That's a bad start. Tell me, says Simon. She sits down on her unmade hotel bed. The room is small, with worn bamboo furniture and a distant view of the creek. Underwear is visible in Eve's open suitcase, and she wishes they'd agreed to meet downstairs. It's Hurst. She hands him the phone. The Fanine credit card trail's gone dead. DCI Gary Hurst is the senior investigating officer on the Victor Kedron case. He has been following up a loose end which, just conceivably, could indicate an error on the part of those who set up Kedron's murder. It seems that the theft of the card used by Lucy Drake to check into the hotel was reported to the police by Julia Fanine, but not to her bank. As a consequence, the hotel registration went through unchecked. This discrepancy puzzled Hurst, especially when Fanine insisted that she had rung her bank's lost and stolen card number, a claim validated by her mobile phone records. It turns out that the bank's credit card support services are outsourced to a call center company based near Swindon, in the southwest of England, and Hurst's investigation has concluded that one of the company's employees unfroze the card after it was reported missing, so that it remained usable. Thousands of pounds worth of clothes, flights and hotel bills were then charged to the account over a 2-week period, at the end of which the expenditure stopped dead. Which is where the investigation has stalled. Hurst's text reads, right now working through 90+ employees who might have taken JF's call. But relevant records deleted, so not confident of a result. And even if by some miracle he gets a result, it's a dead cert. We just hit another cutout, says Simon, returning Eve's phone. She slips it into her bag. Let's go and see Jin Chang. The taxi should be waiting downstairs. Opened in 2009, the first new building on the Bund for 70 years, the Peninsula Hotel is dauntingly grand. The lobby is pillared Art Deco, a tone poem in ivory and old gold. The carpets are vast, the conversation muted. White uniformed bellboys hurry discreetly between the vast reception desk and the near-silent lifts. In the online catalog, Eve's mint green shift dress was described as a chic, summery office staple, But catching sight of herself in a mirror in the lift, she senses that she's striking the wrong note. The dress is sleeveless and she's cut herself shaving, her armpit still stings quite badly, so somehow she has to conduct a vital meeting with a senior officer of the Chinese Ministry of State Security without ever raising her right arm. Jin Chang is alone in the suite. It's vast, soft-lit and restfully luxurious. Sky blue curtains frame a view of the river, and more distantly the skyscrapers of Pudong. Mrs. Pilastri, Mr. Mortimer. This is a great pleasure. Thank you for agreeing to see us, says Eve, as she and Simon lower themselves into silk-upholstered armchairs. I have most affectionate memories of Richard Edwards. I trust he's in good health? For some minutes, the niceties are observed on both sides. Jin is a quietly spoken figure in a dove-gray suit. He speaks English with a faint American accent. At intervals a look of refined melancholy touches his features, as if he's saddened by the vagaries of human behavior. The murder of Zhang Lei, Eve begins. Yes, indeed. He steeples his long, manicured fingers. We wish to convey our assurances that this action was not sponsored, executed or in any way enabled by agents of the British government, Eve says. We have had our differences with your ministry, particularly concerning the activities of the individuals calling themselves the White Dragon. A unit, we have reason to believe, of the Chinese military. But this is not the way we would choose to resolve those differences. Jin smiles. Mrs. Pilastri, you are mistaken in thinking that the White Dragon Group is part of the Chinese People's Liberation Army. They, and others like them, are just mischief makers, acting without reference to anyone. Eve inclines her head diplomatically. This, she knows, is the official line on all cyber attacks originating in China. We're here in Shanghai to assist in any way we can, says Simon. Especially with reference to the killer of Lieutenant Colonel Zhang. He was, I'm afraid, just plain Mr. Zhang. Of course. My apologies. But we understand that Richard Edwards has communicated to you our suspicions concerning a female assassin? He has. And I'm aware of the circumstances surrounding the death of Victor Kedron. Eve leans forward in her chair. Let me cut to the chase. We believe that the woman who killed Kedron also killed Zhang Lei. We believe she is not acting alone, but on behalf of an organization of considerable reach and power. That is indeed cutting to the chase, Mrs. Pilastri. May I ask what Zhang Lei and Victor Kedron had in common, that they should both be eliminated by this organization? At this stage it's hard to say. But I would repeat that neither we nor our American colleagues had any hand in the death of Zhang Lei. Nor that of Victor Kedron. Jin folds his hands in his lap. I must accept your assurances. Eve is suddenly conscious of the cut under her arm. For a ghastly moment she wonders if she has left a bloodstain on the silk upholstery of her chair. May I be frank with you? She asks. Please do. Richard Edwards's belief, which we share, is that a covert organization, as yet unidentified, is committing these murders. We don't know their purpose or agenda. We don't know who they are, or how many. But we suspect that they have people placed in our own organization and also in MI5, for whom I used to work. And almost certainly in other intelligence services. Jin frowns. I'm not sure how I can help you. Eve inclines her head diplomatically. This, she knows, is the official line on all cyber attacks originating in China. We're here in Shanghai to assist in any way we can, says Simon. Especially with reference to the killer of Lieutenant Colonel Zhang. He was, I'm afraid, just plain Mr. Zhang. Of course. My apologies. But we understand that Richard Edwards has communicated to you our suspicions concerning a female assassin? He has. And I'm aware of the circumstances surrounding the death of Victor Kedron. Eve leans forward in her chair. Let me cut to the chase. We believe that the woman who killed Kedron also killed Zhang Lei. We believe she is not acting alone, but on behalf of an organization of considerable reach and power. That is indeed cutting to the chase, Mrs. Pilastri. May I ask what Zhang Lei and Victor Kedron had in common, that they should both be eliminated by this organization? At this stage it's hard to say. But I would repeat that neither we nor our American colleagues had any hand in the death of Zhang Lei. Nor that of Victor Kedron. Jin folds his hands in his lap. I must accept your assurances. Eve is suddenly conscious of the cut under her arm. For a ghastly moment she wonders if she has left a bloodstain on the silk upholstery of her chair. May I be frank with you? She asks. Please do. Richard Edwards's belief, which we share, is that a covert organization, as yet unidentified, is committing these murders. We don't know their purpose or agenda. We don't know who they are, or how many. But we suspect that they have people placed in our own organization and also in MI5, for whom I used to work. And almost certainly in other intelligence services. Jin frowns. I'm not sure how I can help you. Eve feels the meeting slipping from her grasp. Our only way forward, as things stand, is to follow the money. Is there anyone in the Western Security Services, Mr. Jin, whom you know or suspect to be in the pay of an organization such as I have described? Silence swirls dizzyingly around her. She senses Simon's shock at the impropriety of her question. Jin's features remain impassive. Perhaps we might order some tea, he suggests. Have you seen my black cardigan? Villanelle asks. The Annabelle Lee one, with the pearl buttons? In answer, Alice Mao groans. She's lying on her bed opposite a young man with chiseled features and a gym-toned body which gleams like oiled teak. Both of them are naked. Beneath the silk sheet, the man's hand is moving rhythmically between Alice's legs. It's 2:30 in the afternoon. I'm sure I left it here somewhere, Villanelle murmurs. Exasperated, Alice rolls onto her stomach. Please. Just come to bed? I have to go shopping. Now? Villanelle shrugs. Ken's very much in demand, you know, Alice says. He's doing us a huge favor, fitting us in like this. Villanelle knows Ken's story, because Alice has told it to her. How he was a student at Hong Kong University, completing an MA dissertation on the late poetry of Sylvia Plath, when he was talent spotted in a hotel steam room. How he became Ken Hung, the most famous porn star in China. As if on cue, Ken throws back the sheets. Ladies, we have wood. Alice gasps. Oh my goodness, it's just like in the films. Bigger, even. Sweetie, at least have a little stroke. Sorry, but I really don't want that thing anywhere near me. I just want my black cardigan. Villanelle frowns. You don't happen to know somewhere I can buy nice kitchen stuff, do you? You could try Puchua Parlor on Changhua Lu, says Ken, complacently regarding the most famous penis in China. I get all my bakeware there. I'm a big Nigella fan. An hour later, Villanelle is strolling down one of the many aisles of Puchua Parlor, noting the positioning of the CCTV cameras. It's a warehouse store for the restaurant trade, offering every imaginable appliance and vessel. Shelf after shelf is piled high with pans, skillets, steamers, hot pots, baking dishes and gleaming tinware. There are elaborate cake stands, fantastical jelly molds. And an entire aisle of woks. Tiny woks for flash frying individual prawns, jacuzzi-sized. Woks capacious enough for a whole ox. The place has only a handful of customers. There's a young couple quietly arguing about kebab skewers, a harassed-looking man loading a trolley with bamboo dim sum steamers, and an elderly woman muttering to herself as she picks through the melon ballers. In the last aisle, Villanelle finds what she's looking for. Cleavers. Fine-bladed cleavers, for Villanelle knows Ken's story, because Alice has told it to her. How he was a student at Hong Kong University, completing an MA dissertation on the late poetry of Sylvia Plath, when he was talent spotted in a hotel steam room. How he became Ken Hung, the most famous porn star in China. As if on cue, Ken throws back the sheets. Ladies, we have wood. Alice gasps. Oh my goodness, it's just like in the films. Bigger, even. Sweetie, at least have a little stroke. Sorry, but I really don't want that thing anywhere near me. I just want my black cardigan. Villanelle frowns. You don't happen to know somewhere I can buy nice kitchen stuff, do you? You could try Puchua Parlor on Changhua Lu, says Ken, complacently regarding the most famous penis in China. I get all my bakeware there. I'm a big Nigella fan. An hour later, Villanelle is strolling down one of the many aisles of Puchua Parlor, noting the positioning of the CCTV cameras. It's a warehouse store for the restaurant trade, offering every imaginable appliance and vessel. Shelf after shelf is piled high with pans, skillets, steamers, hot pots, baking dishes and gleaming tinware. There are elaborate cake stands, fantastical jelly molds. And an entire aisle of woks. Tiny woks for flash frying individual prawns, jacuzzi-sized. Woks capacious enough for a whole ox. The place has only a handful of customers. There's a young couple quietly arguing about Kebab skewers, a harassed-looking man loading a trolley with bamboo dim sum steamers, and an elderly woman muttering to herself as she picks through the melon ballers. In the last aisle, Villanelle finds what she's looking for. Cleavers. Fine-bladed cleavers for. "Okay, I admit it," says Eve. "I'm nervous." "You've been on dates before, haven't you?" "This is not a date. This is an appointment with the head of the Chinese Secret Service." "If you say so. I think he fancies you." "Simon, please. You're not helping. I feel very uncomfortable in this dress. And these shoes. I can hardly walk." "You look adorable. When are you meeting him?" "He's picking me up downstairs in 10 minutes. What are your plans?" "I thought I might take a stroll down the Bund." He shrugs. "Perhaps look in somewhere for a cocktail." "Well, be good. I'm going to wait downstairs." "Have fun." She throws him a sardonic glance, and teetering a little in her new Lilian Zhang cocktail dress and Mary Ching stilettos, the prospect of submitting the expenses claim makes her blood run cold, runs a last check in the mirror. She looks, she's forced to admit, pretty good. The hotel hairdressers even magicked her unruly hair into something resembling a French roll. "You don't think the makeup's too much?" "No. Now go." The invitation came as a surprise, to say the least. The meeting in the Peninsula Suite had more or less stalled after Eve's questioning of Jin Chang. Spies, even among themselves, are highly disinclined to admit that they actively engage in spying. Following a further hour of discussion of the murder of Zhang Lei, in the course of which Eve handed over a prepared dossier about the investigation of the Kedron murder, Jin brought the meeting to a halt and ushered her and Simon down to the lobby. There, amid the Art Deco grandeur, the same cast of business types appeared to be engaged in the same muted conversations. As they shook hands beneath the pillared portico, Jin hesitated. "Mrs. Pilastri, I'd very much like to show you something of Shanghai. Are you by any chance free this evening?" "I am," she said, surprised. "Excellent. I'll call for you at your hotel at 8 o'clock. She opened her mouth to thank him, but he was already gliding soundlessly away. He arrives at 8 p.m. precisely. He's on a scooter, wearing a sharp black suit and open-necked white shirt, and looks a very different man from the cautious intelligence officer Eve met just hours earlier. "Mrs. Pilastri, you look spectacular." With a courtly smile he hands her a tiny bouquet of fresh violets, tied with a silk ribbon. Eve is enchanted, and thinking of Nico teaching GCSE maths to a class of bored teenagers half a world away, she feels a stab of guilt. Thanking Jin, she wraps the dewy violets in a tissue and places them in her bag. "Ready?" he asks, passing her a helmet. "Ready." She arranges herself side saddle, as she's seen Shanghainese women do. They swing out into the traffic, and onto East Nanjing Road. The thoroughfare, one of Shanghai's busiest, is gridlocked and exhaust-choked. Jin weaves the scooter deftly between the crawling vehicles and comes to a halt at a red light. As Eve sits there, the scooter burbling beneath her, she catches sight of a striking figure walking up the pavement towards her. A young woman, poised and slender, in jeans and a black, pearl-button cardigan. Dark blonde hair slicked back from fine, sharp-cut features. A subtle, sensual twist to the mouth. Eve watches her for a moment. Has she seen that face before, or is it just déjà vu? As if sensing her stare, the woman glances back. She's beautiful, in the way that a bird of prey is beautiful, but never has Eve encountered a gaze of such inhuman blankness. When the lights change, and the scooter lurches forward, the temperature seems to have dropped a degree or two. 5 minutes later they draw up at an intersection, outside a grand Art Deco building topped by a cascading neon spire. Colored lights course up and down its antique facade. Above the portico, the word Paramount blazes into the twilight. "You like dancing?" Yes, Eve replies. "I do, actually." The Paramount is a famous landmark from the 1930s. This is where everyone came to dance. Gangsters, high society, beautiful women. She smiles. "You sound as if you'd like those days to return." He locks the scooter. "They were interesting times. But then so are these. Come." She accompanies him into a foyer hung with sepia photographs, and from there into a small lift that conveys them unhurriedly to the 4th floor. The dance hall is like a music box in gilt and red plush. On the stage, a middle-aged singer in a floor-length evening dress is delivering a smoky-voiced version of Bye Bye Blackbird, as a dozen or so couples gravely quickstep around the cantilevered dance floor. Jin leads Eve to a side table in a booth, and orders Coca-Cola for both of them. "Business first?" he asks. "Business first," she agrees, sipping the sugary drink. A couple glides wordlessly past them. What I tell you, you never repeat, okay? She shakes her head. This conversation never took place. We talked about dancing. About nightlife in old Shanghai. He moves closer to her on the banquette, and inclines his head towards hers. Our late friend, as you know, was killed in an establishment in the old city. He was a surgery fetishist. A masochist. We knew about this. He visited the place every 6 weeks or so, and paid a professional sex worker to simulate various medical procedures. He was discreet about these visits, his colleagues knew nothing about them. But not discreet enough to escape your department's notice, evidently. Evidently. Eve notes that Jin is, in effect, admitting that Zhang Lei was working for the state. So we are either looking at an organization able to mount an extensive and long-term surveillance operation. She hesitates. Or one with access to information acquired by your department. Jin frowns. Certainly the former. Just conceivably the latter. Eve nods slowly. Either way, a sophisticated organization with a long reach. Yes. And I don't believe it was the British, or the Americans. The economic consequences of discovery would be catastrophic? Eve suggests. Yes. That's right. So do you have any other ideas for who might be responsible? Right now, not really, although one can never discount a Russian connection, especially if, as you suggest, the same organization is responsible for the death of Victor Kedrin. So we're trying very hard to find out more about the woman they sent. We know that she entered by the back stairway, overpowered the sex worker who calls herself Nurse Wu, who remembers nothing beyond the fact that her attacker was a woman, and then eliminated our friend by means of carbon monoxide poisoning. You're sure that was the cause of death? It couldn't have been an accident on the part of this nurse person? After all, she wasn't qualified to administer surgical gas or anything of the sort. Surely. The only gas she ever gave her patients was pure oxygen. We tested all the tanks there. And as it happens, as well as being a part-time sex worker, she was also a trained nurse, who worked in a private medical facility in Pudong. So she knew what she was doing. And the symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning are unmistakable. Cherry red lips and skin? Exactly. The pathologist was in no doubt. But no sign of a CO tank, or canister? No, the killer took it away with her. And what makes this Wu person so sure that her attacker was a woman? She remembers the feel of a woman's breasts against her back when she was grabbed. And the hand that went over her mouth was strong, she said, but not a man's hand. She's sure about this? Very sure. And there's a man who has a food stall on Dangfeng Road opposite the backstairs. Exit, he knows what the building is, and that only men come out of that door. So when he saw a woman, he remembered her. Does he remember what she looked like? No, he said all Westerners look the same to him. Baseball cap is all he remembers. New York Yankees. Our killer's very good at being invisible. Has the material on the Kedrin murder been any use? Very much so. My service is very grateful, Mrs. Pilastri. We showed the images of the woman in the hotel to people who work on Dangfeng Road, and several said they might have seen her that day. But no one was sure? No. Unfortunately. They're very poor quality images. And you can't see her face. So I'm not surprised. We are grateful, nevertheless. And of course we're checking against visas, and watching all border points. We're talking to people in all the hotels, clubs, and restaurants that a foreigner might visit. I'm sure you're doing everything that could be done. We are. Jin smiles. And now, would you like to dance? Dragon fruit martini in hand, Simon makes his way towards one of the Star Bar's few unoccupied seats, which appears to be upholstered in zebra skin. Boss Ass Bitch by Nikki Minaj is pumping from concealed speakers, and the place is filling fast. Simon is wearing diesel jeans and a cotton jacket, and the Lonely Planet guide from which he chose the bar, a watering hole. Popular with the cashed-up expat crowd, is weighing down his right-hand pocket. He would never admit it to Eve, and obviously she's his head of section and it's Jin Chang's turf, But he's not exactly happy that she swanned off without him for a night on the town with Jin. It's not as if she's not going to tell him everything that's discussed when she gets back, but it would have been nice if she'd, at the very least, suggested that he come along. He's very fond of Eve in an exasperated, semi-protective sort of way, her fashion sense, oh my god, and he certainly isn't one of those sad haters who can't deal with a female boss, but she can be pretty insensitive at times, despite her undoubtedly high wattage intellect. Lowering himself into the zebra skin chair with an insouciance he doesn't feel, Simon takes a deep hit of his drink. The Star Bar's decor is preposterous, even for Shanghai. The emerald green stingray skin walls are hung with sub-pornographic paintings, the fireplace is black marble, a vast Fortuny-style chandelier glows overhead. The overall effect is absurd, alluring, vaguely satanic. The martini is volcanically strong, caressing Simon's taste buds with sugary top notes before drenching his cerebellum in iced Berry Brothers No. 3 gin. Half closing his eyes, he feels himself wreathed in flavor. Juniper, a hint of grapefruit, and that sexy, suggestive dragon fruit sweetness. Fuck me, he murmurs, his brain clouding with pleasure. That hits the spot. Around him drift expensively dressed revelers. Friends, office colleagues, lovers. Why is it always like this? Everyone else at ease, having the time of their overpaid lives, while he's on the outside, face pressed to the glass, invisible. All alone? At first Simon takes no notice, not believing that the question has been addressed to him. Then the slight, dark-haired figure at his side swims into focus. He takes in the mischievous upturned eyes, the dimpled grin, the sharp little teeth. I suppose I am, yes. You new here then? I think I remember if I see you before. My name's Simon. I got in a couple of days ago. He gazes at her, marveling at the soft swell of her breasts and the lilac crop top, the trim little stomach, the skinny jeans and pretty, strappy shoes. She is, without question, the most beautiful creature he's ever seen. Hi, she says. I'm Janie. Jin Chang is a superb dancer. To the swooping, shivering strains of Moon River, he waltzes Eve expertly round the floor, one hand lightly holding hers, the other against the bare flesh of her back, guiding her. Despite their price, she's glad she bought the cocktail dress and the shoes. So would you like to have lived in the 1930s? She asks him. It was a time of great inequality. Great hardship for many. I know. But also elegance. Glamour. Are you familiar with Chinese cinema, Mrs. Pilastri? No, I'm afraid not. There's a film I love, made here in Shanghai in the 1930s, called The Goddess. A silent film. Very sad. Very beautiful and tragic actress Ruan Lingyu. She shows great emotion in her face, and in her movements. She sounds wonderful. She killed herself, aged 24. She was unhappy in love. Oh my goodness, that is tragic. Indeed. Today, I don't think many people in Shanghai would kill themselves for love. Too busy making money. You sound like a romantic, Mr. Jin? There are a few of us left. But we operate in secret. Like spies? Eve suggests. They both smile, and Moon River comes to a close. Ice blue neon flickers round the stage. And the singer segues into the girl from Ipanema. The foxtrot, says Jin. My favorite. I'm sorry you're stuck with me. With my 2 left feet. You have 2 left feet? Really? It's an expression. It means I'm a bit clumsy. That is something I would never say about you, Mrs. Pilastri. Half an hour later they're on the scooter again, careering through streets vivid with neon. Eve is enjoying herself. Jin is a man of many interests. Hunan food, early Chinese cinema, and post-punk music among them. His favorite band, he tells her, is Gang of Four. With that name, how could I resist them? At the same time Eve recognizes that for all the wry surface charm, there is a steeliness to Jin Chang. In a tight corner, this man would make the hard choice, take the pragmatic decision. They come to a halt outside an unprepossessing looking establishment on a side street. As Jin opens the door, oily steam gusts into their faces. The place is crammed, and noise levels are deafening. Everyone seems to be shouting, and there's a continuous clattering of pans and woks. From the kitchen, standing in the doorway, Eve is pushed roughly out of the way by a departing customer. Taking her arm, Jin steers her towards the small counter. A tiny, ancient woman in a Greasy Apron appears and directs them to a plastic top table. Narrowing her eyes at Eve, she screeches at Jin in Mandarin. She says, "I'm a very naughty boy," he tells Eve. She thinks I've picked you up. She laughs. "You're going to have to help me with the menu." He inspects the streamers pinned to the walls. "How about bullfrog and rice wine?" In the end they settle for spicy skewered shrimps and cumin-crusted ribs washed down with cold beer. "It's delicious, among the best food Eve has ever tasted." "Thank you," she says, when she can eat no more. "That was fantastic." "Not bad," he agrees. "And private." She knows what he means. Given the noise levels, audio surveillance would be impossible. "Here. I have something for you," he says, and below the level of the table, places a sealed envelope on her lap. She doesn't move or speak. She says, "I'm a very naughty boy," he tells Eve. She thinks I've picked you up. She laughs. "You're going to have to help me with the menu." He inspects the streamers pinned to the walls. "How about bullfrog and rice wine?" In the end they settle for spicy skewered shrimps and cumin-crusted ribs washed down with cold beer. "It's delicious, among the best food Eve has ever tasted." "Thank you," she says, when she can eat no more. "That was fantastic." "Not bad," he agrees. "And private." She knows what he means. Given the noise levels, audio surveillance would be impossible. "Here. I have something for you," he says, and below the level of the table, places a sealed envelope on her lap. She doesn't move or speak. "I'm trusting you with my career, Mrs. Pilastri. If you are right, and we face a common enemy, this organization you speak of, we should work together. But I doubt Beijing would see it that way, so." "I understand," says Eve quietly. "And thank you. We will not let you down." He inspects the streamers pinned to the walls. "How about bullfrog and rice wine?" In the end they settle for spicy skewered shrimps and cumin-crusted ribs washed down with cold beer. "It's delicious, among the best food Eve has ever tasted." "Thank you," she says, when she can eat no more. "That was fantastic." "Not bad," he agrees. "And private." She knows what he means. Given the noise levels, audio surveillance would be impossible. "Here. I have something for you," he says, and below the level of the table, places a sealed envelope on her lap. She doesn't move or speak. "I'm trusting you with my career, Mrs. Pilastri. If you are right, and we face a common enemy, this organization you speak of, we should work together. But I doubt Beijing would see it that way, so." "I understand," says Eve quietly. "And thank you. We will not let you down." 2 dragon fruit martinis later, Sprite for her, touchingly, they're dancing. The playlist is commercial pop, and Janie sings along to every track. Simon's not much of a dancer, but the floor's too crowded to do more than shuffle and nod. The tempo slows, and he places his hands on her hips, feeling their gentle sway, inhaling the scent of the jasmine blooms pinned to her upswept hair. Intoxicated, he draws her towards him, and she lays her head on his shoulder. Through his jacket, which he dares not remove for fear that it will be stolen, he feels the unyielding pressure of her breasts. His heart pounding, he touches his lips to the soft tendrils of hair at her temple. He doesn't think she'll sense this, but she does, and her face tilts up to his, her lips parted. Kissing her, feeling the sugary flicker of her tongue, he feels a lightness of being so intense. He wonders if he's going to pass out. She moves her mouth across his cheek, nips his earlobe with her little cat's teeth. "You know I wasn't always a girl," she whispers. He knows. He can feel the evidence swelling against his thigh. "It's fine, Janie," he says. "Really, it's fine." Back at the Seabird Hotel, Eve knocks on Simon's door, but he's still out. And having a good time, she hopes. He's a good friend and colleague, but he definitely needs to loosen up. In her room, she takes out the envelope that Jin has given her. Inside is a single A4 page, which appears to be a printout of a transfer of funds between 2 international banks. The banks and account holders are identified only by number codes. The sum in question is a little over £17 million. Eve stares at the paper for a moment, trying to divine its importance, before replacing it in its envelope and locking it in her briefcase. Jin, she knows, is returning to Beijing tomorrow. The investigation into Zhang Lei's murder will continue, but there is no more that she can contribute. It's time for her and Simon to fly back to London, report to Richard Edwards, and investigate the lead that Jin has given her at such personal risk. She also needs, urgently, to make things right with Nico. It will be good to be home again, but part of her will miss Shanghai and its luxurious strangeness, its myriad scents and colors. And part of her, she's forced to admit, will miss Jin Chang. In bed, she reviews the evening moment by moment, and in particular the dancing. The open window admits a faint breeze, and with it the corrupt tang of Suzhou Creek. It takes her some time to fall asleep. Drifting between wakefulness and dream, Simon knows a peace that he's never thought possible. Beside him, Janie turns, and raises her arms sleepily above her head. "Promise you like me?" She murmurs. "Not just using for sex?" Wham bam, then bye bye Janie? "Like you?" He wants to tell her. "I love you. You're everything I've ever wanted. I'd give up my work, my country, everything I know and believe in, to share my life with you." But he says nothing, and instead plants slow kisses on the pale curve of her left breast. She watches him for a moment, and then, eyelids fluttering, she plucks at her nipples and they begin again. Some time later Simon wakes, and through half-closed eyes sees her tiptoeing round the room, slim-hipped and naked, long hair swinging round her shoulders. When she first brought him here, he was touched by the modesty of the place. The cheap chest of drawers and dressing table, the Barbie pink curtains and bedspread, the Hello Kitty poster on the wall. Now she touches his clothes, running her fingers over the jacket he slung over the single chair. A slim hand disappears, and an instant later reappears holding his phone. She looks at it admiringly for a couple of seconds, and replaces it. The action touches Simon, who guesses that such an article is way beyond her budget. Then, with great speed, she dresses herself, pulling on white knickers, jeans and a t-shirt, and pushing her feet into a pair of trainers. As she tiptoes towards Simon, he pretends to be asleep. She leans over him for a moment, so close that he can hear her breath, and then backs soundlessly away. Opening his eyes, he sees her dip her hand back into his jacket, take the phone, and hurry from the room. Simon lies there for a moment, too shocked to move. Then he leaps from the bed, and lifts the rattan blind. He catches a fleeting glimpse of Janie beneath a street light, moving fast, and then she's gone. He pulls his clothes on, sick with dread, and races down the narrow staircase to the street. It's rained while they've been in bed, and the air is charged with the smell of the wet streets. Simon is soon breathless and footsore, his shirt clammy with sweat. But there she is ahead, and he drives himself after her. What the fuck? What the actual fuck? Has he just fallen hook, line and sinker for the oldest scam in the book? If even Richard Edwards discover any of this, any of it, he's finished. Forget the sheer, gobsmacking unprofessionalism, the humiliation would be off the scale. Honey trapped by a nightclub tranny. A chick with a dick. What a 24-carat twat he's going to look. There's just one chance. If he can get to her, and somehow get his phone back. Perhaps, just perhaps, Janie's exactly what she says she is. Perhaps she simply couldn't resist the chance to make a few bucks by stealing a high-tech foreign phone. Please, he prays, as he dodges and weaves through the crowds, dragging the muggy night air into his lungs. Please let that be the case. Let it be something forgivable. Let me get back with Janie. Because he knows that as long as he lives, he will never experience anything like the dreamy bliss of their intertwined limbs. The streets are narrowing now, and the crowds thinning. Instead of street lights, there are loops of low wattage bulbs strung between half-completed dwellings. Incurious faces look up from beneath sagging awnings and watch him as he passes. There are still a few food stalls operating, a few woks sizzling over charcoal fires, and Simon slows to avoid a rickety table supporting a plastic bowl of writhing, living creatures. Janie's still about 40 yards ahead. Christ, she can move, and now they're in some kind of New build estate. Rendered brick housing blocks intersected by a grid of unlit lanes. The areas. Almost deserted, and if she turns now, she'll see him. Shrinking into the shadows, Simon checks his watch. It's almost 2 a.m. The temptation to call out to Janie is agonizing, overwhelming. But he has to know the truth. There's just one chance. If he can get to her, and somehow get his phone back. Perhaps, Janie's exactly what she says she is. Perhaps she simply couldn't resist the chance to make a few bucks by stealing a high-tech foreign phone. Please, he prays, as he dodges and weaves through the crowds, dragging the muggy night air into his lungs. Please let that be the case. Let it be something forgivable. Let me get back with Janie. Because he knows that as long as he lives, he will never experience anything like the dreamy bliss of their intertwined limbs. The streets are narrowing now, and the crowds thinning. Instead of street lights, there are loops of low wattage bulbs strung between half-completed dwellings. Incurious faces look up from beneath sagging awnings and watch him as he passes. There are still a few food stalls operating, a few woks sizzling over charcoal fires, and Simon slows to avoid a rickety table supporting a plastic bowl of writhing, living creatures. Janie's still about 40 yards ahead. Christ, she can move, and now they're in some kind of new build estate. Rendered brick housing blocks intersected by a grid of unlit lanes. The areas. Almost deserted, and if she turns now, she'll see him. Shrinking into the shadows, Simon checks his watch. It's almost 2 a.m. The temptation to call out to Janie is agonizing, overwhelming. But he has to know the truth. At the entrance to one of the buildings, she presses a buzzer. After perhaps half a minute, a figure steps into the dim pool of light, and Simon knows immediately that the scenario is infinitely worse than any he's imagined. The man's not Chinese. He looks Russian or Eastern European, and he's got hardcore intelligence operative written all over him. Even at a distance, he radiates a pitiless authority. I'm fucked, Simon tells himself, as Janie hands the man the MI6 issue phone. I'm totally and utterly fucked. Too wretched to be afraid, he forces himself to note every detail of the man's appearance. There's a brief conversation, and then he and Janie vanish into the building together. After a minute, Simon warily approaches the entrance, looking for a name or a number. There doesn't appear to be either, but he's confident he will be able to find the place again. Briefly, he considers simply telling Eve that he has lost his phone, that it's been stolen, and not saying anything about Janie. But he knows that it's not in him to lie. He'll tell her everything and offer his resignation, effective immediately. Perhaps she'll accept it and send him back to London for what will undoubtedly be a highly unpleasant debriefing by Richard Edwards. Perhaps, and his heart leaps sadly at the prospect, they'll decide to keep him in play. Feed him back to Janie to find out who's running her. He's 50 meters from the building when he hears his name called. He stops, sure that he's mistaken. But there it is again, low and clear on the warm, damp air. Is it Janie? How could it be? As far as she's concerned, he's asleep in her flat. Simon, over here. The voice is coming from the unlit lane on his left. Heart pounding, he takes half a dozen tentative steps, senses movement in the darkness, catches an incongruous hint of French perfume on the night air. Who's there? He asks, his voice unsteady. He has a momentary impression of a figure exploding from the shadows, of the whirling arc of the shukabocho, and then the carbon steel blade chops through his throat with such force that his head is almost severed. Rising on her toes like a matador, eyes demonic, Villanelle sidesteps the black swathe of blood thrown from the falling body. Simon's limbs shudder, a bubbling sound issues from his neck, and as he dies, Villanelle feels a rush of feeling so intense, so icily numbing, it almost brings her to her knees. She crouches there for a moment, waves of sensation coursing through her. Then, wrenching the shukabocho free of the corpse and dropping it into a plastic shopping bag, followed by her bloodied surgical gloves, she walks swiftly away. 10 minutes later, she spots a battered Kimco scooter parked at the foot of an apartment block. Disabling the ignition lock and kickstarting the engine, she heads northwards, keeping to the narrower roads, until she reaches Nan Suzhou Lu, where she drops the plastic bag into the dark swirl of the creek. It's a beautiful night, the sky purple, the city dim gold, and Villanelle feels vibrantly, thrillingly alive. Killing the English spy has restored something in her. The Zhonglei action had its professional satisfactions, but the moment itself lacked impact. Taking out Simon Mortimer was a return to first principles. A violent, artistic kill. The shukabocho, weight in the hand, was not so very different from the Spetsnaz machete her father taught her to use when she was a teenager. Unwieldy to begin with, but a lethal thing when correctly deployed. The beauty of it is, she had no choice. Constantine had ordered Janie to make sure that she was never followed to a rendezvous, and to drug the Englishman if necessary. But the little hooker fucked up, and once Simon Mortimer saw Constantine, he couldn't be allowed to live. That's the way she's going to argue it, anyway. The killing will almost certainly be blamed on the triads, whose traditional murder weapon is the cleaver. Pilastri will get the message loud and clear, but as far as everyone else is concerned, the press, the police, Simon Mortimer's just going to be a tourist who found himself in the wrong place, at the wrong time. Villanelle is about to head southwards towards the French concession when a thought occurs to her. Within minutes, the scooter is puttering to a halt at the foot of a building adjacent to the Seabird Hotel. The hotel is unlit except for a small blue neon sign over the entrance. Villanelle knows which room is Eve's. Constantine's surveillance people have watched her come and go since the night she and Simon arrived. Silently, Villanelle climbs up the side of the hotel, the antique pipework and ironwork balconies offering easy hand and footholds even in the near darkness, and slips feet first through the open, third-floor window. For almost 2 minutes she crouches there, unmoving. Then she steps soundlessly towards the bed. Eve's clothes have been hung over a chair, and Villanelle gently runs the back of her hand over the black silk cocktail dress before lifting it to her face. It smells, very faintly, of scent, perspiration and traffic fumes. Eve's lying with her mouth slightly open and one arm flung across the pillow. She's wearing a flesh-colored camisole, and without makeup looks unexpectedly vulnerable. Kneeling beside her, Villanelle listens to the whisper of her breath, and inhales her warm smell. Noting the faint tremor of Eve's mouth, she touches her tongue to her own upper lip which has begun, very faintly, to throb. "My enemy," she murmurs in Russian, touching Eve's hair. "Moi vrag." Almost as an afterthought, she searches the room. There's a combination-locked briefcase chained to the bed she decides to leave alone. But on the bedside table, there's a pretty, gilt-clasped eternity bracelet, and this Villanelle takes. "Thank you," she whispers, and with a last look at Eve slips silently out of the window. As she goes she hears the distant siren of an ambulance and the whooping of police cars. But Eve, for now, does not stir. It's 5 weeks later, and at midday the grey sky over the Devere research station promises rain. Set in 60 acres outside the village of Bullington in Hampshire, the former Logistics Corps barracks appears from the outside to comprise little more than a cluster of dilapidated red brick blocks and prefabricated huts. Chain-link fencing topped with razor wire and signs prohibiting photography lend the place a grimly uninviting aspect. Despite its neglected air, Devere is an active station, classified as a top-secret government asset. Among other functions, it acts as a base for E Squadron, a special forces unit whose role is to conduct deniable operations in support of the Secret Intelligence Service. Identifying himself at the gatehouse, Richard Edwards parks his 30-year-old S-Class Mercedes on an area of cracked tarmac. With the exception of a couple of security personnel who are making an unhurried circuit of the perimeter, the place appears deserted. Making his way past the main administration block, Richard enters a low, windowless building. Descending to the underground firing range, he finds Eve Field stripping a Glock 19 pistol under the watchful eye of Callum Dennis, the station armorer. "So how are we doing?" he inquires, when the slide, spring, barrel, frame and magazine have been neatly lined up on the gun mat. "Getting there," says Callum. It's 5 weeks later, and at midday the grey sky over the Devere research station promises rain. Set in 60 acres outside the village of Bullington in Hampshire, the former Logistics Corps barracks appears from the outside to comprise little more than a cluster of dilapidated red brick blocks and prefabricated huts. Chain-link fencing topped with razor wire and signs prohibiting photography lend the place a grimly uninviting aspect. Despite its neglected air, Devere is an active station, classified as a top-secret government asset. Among other functions, it acts as a base for E Squadron, a special forces unit whose role is to conduct deniable operations in support of the Secret Intelligence Service. Identifying himself at the gatehouse, Richard Edwards parks his 30-year-old S-Class Mercedes on an area of cracked tarmac. With the exception of a couple of security personnel who are making an unhurried circuit of the perimeter, the place appears deserted. Making his way past the main administration block, Richard enters a low, windowless building. Descending to the underground firing range, he finds Eve Field stripping a Glock 19 pistol under the watchful eye of Callum Dennis, the station armorer. "So how are we doing?" he inquires, when the slide, spring, barrel, frame and magazine have been neatly lined up on the gun mat. "Getting there," says Callum. Eve stares fixedly down the range. "Can I try that last drill again?" Sure, says Callum, handing Richard a pair of ear defenders. Ready when you are, says Eve, putting on her own ear defenders. Callum types a series of instructions into a laptop, and as he hits enter, the range is plunged into darkness. 15 seconds pass, during which the only sound is the sigh of the ventilators and a metallic clicking as Eve assembles the Glock. Then a target, a human torso, is briefly illuminated at the far end of the range and she snaps off 2 shots, the muzzle flash bright in the darkness. 4 more static targets appear, and Eve fires paired shots at each. The final target moves from side to side, and she discharges the last 5 rounds in her magazine in fast succession. Well, Callum says and smiles faintly, lowering a pair of binoculars. His afternoon's fucked. Outside, an hour later, Eve's walking Richard back to his car. Rain's falling in a thin mist, shining her hair. You don't have to do any of this, he tells her. By rights, I should take you off this investigation. Sort you out with an official position in the service. It's too late, Richard. That woman killed Simon, and I want her for it. You don't know that. The police report said it was almost certainly a triad hit, and we know that Janie Cho person he hooked up with had links to organized crime. Richard, please, don't treat me like an idiot, the triads don't chop up tourists. That bitch killed Simon just as surely as she killed Kedron and the others. I saw his body, she almost beheaded him. He unlocks the Mercedes. Stands there for a moment, head bowed. Promise me one thing, Eve. That if you find her, you won't go anywhere near her. And I mean anywhere. She looks away, expressionless. That weapon you insist on carrying. Don't go thinking that a couple of decent groupings on the range gives you any kind of license to take chances. It doesn't. Richard, the reason that I've spent the last 10 days here at Devere is that she knows who I am. Killing Simon was a message, addressed to me. She was saying, I can take you, and the people you care about, any fucking time I want. Eve pats the Glock, now holstered at her side. I've seen what she can do, and I need to be ready, it's that simple. He shakes his head. I should never have got you involved. It was a grave mistake. Well, I am involved. And the only way that this thing is ever going to end is if we find her and kill her. So please let me get on with that. As she walks back towards the range, Richard watches her go. Then he climbs into the Mercedes, switches on the ignition and the windscreen wipers, and begins the drive back to London.